like to encourage questions from the floor. There's a mic at the center of the room and a roving mic. If you just want to put up your hand, the mic will be brought to you. There's a large pool of experience and thoughtful people in this room. We'd be interested in getting that.
Hi, I'm wondering if you can give us your thoughts, or if the panel can give us their thoughts about first steps down this path, down your suggested path, whether it's what would help us to get there even now? If we wanted to try and, would it be some metrics on wellness? Would it be some compassionate economics to figure out where the break even is for us? But how would we, as a territory, start down this path? Your suggestions.
Well, I really do defer to your own territorial legislature and all of you in this room who understand the territory way better than myself. But my instinct would be that one would do a calculation of all the dollars now being spent by the territorial administration, by the federal government, by INAC and others in areas that connect with income security. And then I would ask the question, are those dollars achieving their goals? And you'd have to find some way of factoring in the most recent changes, which I think are quite constructive and positive, because it may be too soon to know the answer about that. And then take a look at what a top-up for all residents who earned beneath an appropriate number. And the reason I say an appropriate number, as you know, the low-income cutoff offered by StatsCan is different region by region based on what the median income is in that area. You will also know that the cost base here is a very different cost base that people have to face in their day-to-day lives than might be the case in Southern Ontario. So you'd have to look at to what line you were topping people up, and beneath what number would they become automatically eligible if they filed their taxes. I think you might want to think about it, because in this way it becomes no fault for the territory, how the federal government could make this as a part of the federal tax system as it related to people who lived in the territory. And when you hear from folks that the federal tax system can't do it, it's actually not true. Federal tax system has a series of variables depending on how far north you live. There's a whole bunch of things in the system now that take into account regional economic and social differences that exist across the country. And just to let you know how I've made this case to my friends on the right, Milton Friedman from the Chicago School of Economics said, talking about the American government, he is, by the way, in favor of a basic income floor, as I've described. He said if you gave the federal government, meaning the American government, responsibility for the Sahara Desert, we would have sand shortages. So his general view is, he loves bureaucrats, but he doesn't think that necessarily more bureaucrats and more public servants is the best answer all the time. He says, I think if you give the money to the people themselves who are low income and who know what their needs are, they will spend it more efficiently. They will spend it more effectively. And the Canada West Foundation, based in Calgary, before the federal government's programs in support of investment for keeping the economy liquid after the Lehman Bank fell, had a survey of 25 top economists in the West and said, if you were going to spend billions to help through this economy, how would you spend it? Would you invest it in infrastructure? Would you invest it in tax? What would you do? And the vast majority of economists in Western Canada, again, not a hotbed of radical left-wing socialism, said, give it to the lowest income people to help them this difficult time, because guess what? They won't be investing in condos. They won't be sending money down to pay their condo fees in Phoenix. They'll be spending it on rent and food and clothing and heat, maybe all at the same time in the same month, which many can't do. And that will circulate the money more effectively in the economy than infrastructure programs, which, while they are doing a good job and I support what's being done, by definition take longer to get going than that sort of thing. So I think if I were looking for what I might be doing were I in the territory and interested, I think that's where my bias would be.
maybe you've partly addressed my question. I was just up at the college this week to see a webcast from, and it was some UBC researchers doing work on early childhood development, arguing that if you invest, 1% of GDP now in early childhood development, you see a huge return. They were looking at 50 years forecast. And, comparing the investments that have been made in those European countries that you were also mentioning have made investments in the wage enhancements and guaranteed wage supplements. And I just wanted you to comment on what's the right mix? Because, maybe you're saying that the best, bang for the buck is invest in that wage supplement. But it seems to me that the poverty is a very complex thing, and maybe in those European countries it's because they have investments in early childhood development and good parental leave and good, poverty reduction programs. Maybe it's that mix rather than just one thing. So any comments on what the research is showing us in there would be useful.
I don't disagree that the investments in early childhood education produce huge returns. I'm not one of those. On occasion, I've had people on the left say, we're against your plan. We're against your plan because that means there'll be no money left for things like early childhood education or special programs for the disabled. I'm not for that at all. I'm saying, let us deal with poverty so that more families have the financial capacity to make decisions which let their kids get into early childhood education and stay in education longer. Let's begin with that. There will still be special needs and other circumstances and particular target areas where we still have to have the capacity to invest. But let's just look what happens to the Ontario budget. You can extrapolate that here in terms of the territorial budget, although I know the structure is somewhat different. The federal government transfers billions of dollars every year to the provinces for health care, post-secondary education, and welfare. Now, those negotiations are coming up very soon. I think deputies are going to be meeting on that issue relatively soon in Newfoundland and Labrador. If everybody through the federal tax system was brought up to above the poverty line, they wouldn't be eligible for welfare. So the portion of money that the territories and the provinces now have to spend, or municipalities, on welfare could be spent on other things, like early childhood education. And there you begin to liberate cash that is now tied into a cycle which you can't break out of, because you can't be totally unfair to people on the bottom end, nor would you ever want to be, but where you know you're not going to get the kind of progress and ROI, return on investment, that you're going to get from early childhood education. I'm for liberating the funds that communities and provinces and municipalities and territories have to invest in priorities that are now being sucked into the anti-activities because there isn't an automatic top-up in the federal system. And so I think that's how, look, let me make a comment for those who would share my general bias in support of feminism in the room. One of the things that Dr. Forget found, the one trend that went the other way, so all my cards are on the table, was that the divorce trend ticked up. When I asked her about this, she said, well, I'm an economist and I believe in choice. Economics works because people make rational choices. And if people who are in an abusive relationship because they can't afford to get out get the financial capacity to make some choices, not a bad thing. Someone had said to me, one of my feminist friends said, you just want this so you'll say all those women getting the basic income thing can stay home